In this episode of the Business Owner's Corner, I wanted to do something slightly different. What we talk to people about often has to do with retirement. We work with a lot of business owners, and one thing that happens with a lot of people is when they get somewhere into their early mid-50s, they start thinking a little bit more seriously about retirement. But questions start to come up. Do I have enough saved for that? Is my 401k big enough? What if I sell my business and have that cash after I pay tax on the sale of my business? Will that be enough for me to retire? What I wanted to do today is go through a hypothetical client situation, or a situation of a hypothetical client, using the actual software, the actual stuff that we use to help people and guide them in these discussions, to give you all a few things to think about if you're in that situation and trying to make some of these decisions for yourself. So what I'm going to do is share my screen here. The software that we use here at the office is called eMoney Advisor. It looks kind of like this. The hypothetical client couple we're looking at here are Jerry Seinfeld and Elaine Bennis. I'm a big Seinfeld fan myself. I've seen every single episode from the old sitcom, and that's just the hypothetical client we like to use here at the office. So Jerry and Elaine are in the following situation. They're both 56 years old. Jerry owns a business. He pays himself handsomely out of that business. He's making currently $450,000 a year. It's worth something, but he doesn't really know what. Elaine is working. She makes $100,000 a year. Jerry has a 401k plan. Elaine has a little bit of a pension. They have some insurance, and they're not really sure what to do. Right now, they both spend, well, they spend as a couple, I should say, $250,000 a year. They think that when they stop working and they don't have to commute into the office and buy work clothes and so forth, their spending will fall from $250,000 to $200,000. But they've got a bunch of options in front of them. Jerry and Elaine are both starting to get kind of tired. They'd like to explore the option of retiring at 60 instead of 65 that they had previously thought about. They'd like to join the local country club, and that comes with a big upfront cash contribution and then annual dues thereafter. And they also want to travel the world with $25,000 a year every year after they step into retirement. So what we're looking at here is an average return scenario, which is really unrealistic. If they get about 7.5% on their investments every single year, knowing what they have, how much they're putting into that 401k and those investments, knowing what their expenses will be, knowing what Elaine's pension will be, this is what their expected portfolio value might look like over time. And off the bat, it doesn't look terribly good because we had a high watermark here about age 75. And then they start burning through their portfolio assets to fund their living expenses. This is a very unrealistic scenario because they're not going to get 7.5% on their investments every single year. Some years it'll be 15%. Some years the market will crash. They might lose 15 or 20%. It bounces around that average of 7.5%. And this is where a Monte Carlo simulation comes into play, where we can tell this program to run 1,000 different trials, knowing the probabilities that different asset classes go up versus down versus sideways historically, and tell us in how many of those trials did Jerry and Elaine get to age 90 respectively with money in the bank, and in how many of them did they work their accounts all the way down to zero. Now, we're taking some liberties and making a whole bunch of assumptions here, and we can't trust this analysis in full, but this is how we like to explore some of these trade-offs. So what might happen, and by the way, you see a probability of success of 60% down here. This is a term I'm not terribly excited about. Really, this is a probability of not having to make any changes, because a probability of success implies that their spending will continue unchanged every year until they work their accounts down to zero. Realistically, that's probably not going to happen. If things are not going well, they'll make some adjustments. They'll spend a little bit less. They'll explore using home equity if they really need to. There are a lot of things that Jerry and Elaine could do. But what they really want to look at is the possibility of retiring early. We've assumed here that they work until 65 and do not sell Jerry's business. When he's ready to retire, they close up shop, close the books, sell off whatever assets they have, walk away. But if he stops working 5 years early and they continue spending, That's not looking so rosy. This is not going to be a good path for them. But if Jerry's able to, what if Jerry's able to package his business and sell it for $1 million, which may or may not be what it's worth today? That they pay tax on that cash. They have a lot of it left over that buffers their portfolio assets, and now they're back up into a somewhat comfortable range. This is maybe a little bit low for my tastes, but we're kind of in the ballpark. If they go this route, can they afford to travel? Can they afford the country club? Well, let's pencil that in. A one-time $50,000 expense to buy into the country club, $15,000 annual expense every year thereafter. We'll tell the program to run 1,000 more trials. Not looking so rosy. But if they offset that with a $30,000 reduction to their other living expenses, could that balance the scales? Does that work? It's thinking, takes the server a minute to run 1,000 trials. Still not quite up to my comfort zone. So what I'm seeing here just to start is that, if Jerry is getting tired and really wants to explore retiring early, I would say, okay, we can explore that. But if you want to retire at age 60, we need to get a substantial amount for the business, and we need to forget the country club. If you really want the country club, or if you really want to travel the world with $25,000 a year, 60 is probably not going to cut it unless you can get something more like 1.5 or $2 million for the business. And as that conversation materializes and evolves and Jerry articulates what his preferences and wishes are, then we can refine this over time to best benefit Jerry and Elaine. And for Jerry, what that does is creates a target in the back of his head of, this is the value I need to build the business to. This is what I need to sell it for in order for us to travel the world, join the country club, and step away from the job in my early 60s as opposed to 65. So those are a few thoughts. This is just a real high-level general conversation, but I thought it might be interesting and somewhat helpful just to explore how we like to use this kind of software to help people guide decision-making who are in the position of approaching retirement and approaching the point where they're ready to exit from their own business.